This video will be discussing the effects of severe anxiety, as well as antisocial personality disorder and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised, and if anyone watching this video is currently experiencing a mental health crisis or contemplating suicide, please call 988 right now. Hello folks, welcome to Jack Reviews Musicals. My name is Jack and I'm a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri, and this is my YouTube channel where I share my thoughts on all of the musical productions I see in the area. In this video, I will be sharing my thoughts on the Muny's now closed 5th production of their 107th season, Dear Evan Hansen, which played July 28th through August 3rd of 2025. Dear Evan Hansen, of course, being Pasek and Paul's modern musical theater classic. It became popular right on the heels of Hamilton, two musicals that I would argue ushered in the peak of this new golden age of musical theater that we're going through right now. A new golden age that I would say probably began right around Wicked or Avenue Q. Much like the best musicals that have come out of the new millennium, Dear Evan Hansen would appeal strongly to teenagers and young adults, particularly because the show centers around an actual teenage character grounded in a very real story that could happen to anyone. Evan Hansen is entering his senior year of high school, healing from a broken arm. Evan is a depressed social outcast living with severe crippling anxiety. Literally, his anxiety crippled him, and his depression is exacerbated by his lack of meaningful relationships in his life. His father left when he was 7 and started a new family out of state. His mother, Heidi, is a nurse's aide studying to be a paralegal, and she tries to be supportive of Evan, but she has a hard time because of her demanding schedule. Evan barely even has any acquaintances at school. His family friend Jared Kleineman barely tolerates him. His classmate Alana Beck is like-minded, but she is an overachiever who is just as socially awkward as Evan. Evan also has a huge crush on the president of the school's jazz club, Zoe Murphy, but of course it's unrequited. Zoe is the younger sister of the school's resident bully, Connor Murphy, who gets into a scrape with Evan on the first day of school. Connor is later forced to apologize to Evan by being the first person to sign his cast, which Connor does so ironically by writing his name in large block lettering. And at first all goes well until Connor sees something that he should not have seen. Evan was assigned by his therapist to write encouraging letters to himself as a way to treat his depression, always starting with the salutation, Dear Evan Hansen. This particular letter confesses Evan's feelings for Zoe, and when he reads this letter, Connor is infuriated, and in retaliation, he steals the letter from Evan. Days later, Evan finds out Connor has taken his own life. He's approached by his parents, Larry and Cynthia Murphy, who found the letter on Connor's person. Larry and Cynthia actually interpret the letter as Connor's suicide note addressed to Evan because of that salutation, Dear Evan Hansen. And Evan ended the letter with the postscript, Sincerely, me. So it would make sense that Larry and Cynthia would think it was written by Connor. And from the language used in the letter and from Connor's giant signature on Evan's cast, Larry and Cynthia believe that Evan was Connor's friend, his only friend. And from the warm feelings that he expressed about Zoe, they believe that Connor loved his sister. And Evan very quickly finds out from there that Connor was an undiagnosed, untreated sociopath, and Zoe was subject to physical and verbal abuse from Connor. And Larry and Cynthia were never quite adequate in their response towards his behavior, with Larry always being ambivalent and Cynthia always coddling him. So upon receiving this letter, they are convinced he never was who he was in life. And Evan relates rather profoundly to the Murphys' grief, so much so that he actually can't bring himself to tell them the truth. And so he decides to comfort them by telling them stories about his and Connor's friendship, which in reality are things that Evan has always fantasized doing if he actually had friends. And in the process, telling these stories brings him a deep connection to the Murphys, seeing them as a second family who is closer to Evan than anyone from his immediate family, including Heidi. So from there, Evan convinces Jared, who is a tech wizard, to code and co-ghostwrite a chain of fake emails, similar to the letter, to create a paper trail. And that paper trail gets leaked to the entire school. And Alana, she is so moved by Evan and Connor's story, she founded the Connor Project, an online movement dedicated to providing visibility to teens living with antisocial personality disorder. During the school assembly promoting the launch of the project, Evan gives a heartfelt speech telling the student body things that he always wanted to be told, taking the form of the song You Will Be Found. The hook of You Will Be Found is even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. Recordings of Evan's speech go viral all over the internet, bringing exposure to Connor's struggles like never before, and bringing closure to the Murphy family, even giving Evan the chance to really be a part of the human race. Evan starts to get ambitious. He begins a fundraising campaign for the Connor Project to save the abandoned apple orchard, where Evan claimed he broke his arm while Connor was at his side. From there, Evan now finds that he has to keep up with this false narrative about Connor constantly, and that begins to take a heavy toll on Evan, with his already declining mental health making him feel even more isolated than he ever was before. Dear Evan Hansen has been praised for its realistic portrayal of the effects of mental illness, how a person's suicide impacts their family and their community, how social media has the ability to both bring people together and also isolate them into camps of us versus them, how the internet can give bad actors the power to otherize people living with mental illness, and the hard work that it takes to form meaningful human relationships. That's a lot to communicate in a 2.5-hour runtime, and within the first 10 years of its premiere, Dear Evan Hansen has received a lot of backlash. For starters, there is one piece of criticism that I kind of agree with, and it's that this story is hinged on, I'll admit, kind of a stupid premise of the magical viral video. We see that a lot of times in stories from the 2010s, written by the kind of folks who are not very likely to understand that the magical viral video nowadays is kind of a dime a dozen. So I will agree, Dear Evan Hansen is pretty dated in that regard. But many accuse Dear Evan Hansen of something more insidious, of romanticizing anxiety and depression, and questioning Evan's ethics as a character. Negative criticisms have been made about Evan using his anxiety as a shield for him to continue deceiving the Murphys, maintaining the lies about Connor, and especially as a means to get closer to Zoe, trying to force a love connection onto her through his false relationship with Connor. Evan has been accused of being very exploitative, not just of Connor's memory and the Murphys, but also of Jared, Alana, and even Heidi. That he's manipulative, he's conniving, and that he paints a negative, harmful picture of people who live with anxiety and depression. After seeing the Muny's production, I am convinced that those criticisms came from the involvement of one person in the original Broadway production, and also the movie adaptation. And you probably already know who. Yep, I do not know Ben Platt. For all that I know, he could be the sweetest guy on the planet, but I despise him as an actor. He's literally just a Broadway Nepo baby. Except he has a particularly punchable face. I have never liked him in any role that he has done, in theater and in film. Though I am holding out hope that Richard Linklater's Merrily We Roll Along turns me around on him, because if he doesn't, there will be words in 20 years from now. God, will I be doing this show in 20 years? Well, anyway. I was actually a detractor of Dear Evan Hansen for a really long time because of Ben Platt's involvement. How his presence in this show, in the title role, makes me just so icky inside. But the Muny's production is brand new, with talent that they curated all on their own. And after finally seeing it live in person in its entirety at the Muny, I was won over. I was hooked, completely turned around. Because of the Muny, Dear Evan Hansen went from a musical that I did not care about whatsoever into, in my opinion, one of the most culturally and socially significant musicals to ever come out of the new millennium. The Muny's production was directed by Rob Ruggiero, who has cemented himself as one of my artistic heroes. Dear Evan Hansen marks the first time that I have ever seen Rob Ruggiero direct a musical that was from the new millennium. Before this, he would almost exclusively direct older musicals like Hello Dolly, Oklahoma, and last year Fiddler on the Roof. He is the kind of guy to call to helm those shows. Rob Ruggiero's directorial style is one that demands from the actors and the designers extremely thorough world building, making the reality of the show that they are doing feel as authentic as possible. He did it with Fiddler on the Roof, and he does it here. With older musicals, he makes them feel relevant and urgent. And so Rob Ruggiero was probably hired because he was the only one who could do justice to the way the show was written. Stephen Levinson's book for Dear Evan Hansen moves very much like a contemporary streaming television show. Shows like The Bear or Severance, where the transitions are snappy, almost all of the dialogue consists of verbal sparring matches, and there are long stretches of time that are focused on deliberately calculated non-verbal cues. Because of that, Stephen Levinson's dialogue lacks the poetry that you're liable to find in a lot of musical theater dialogue, which is something that for many actors of musical theater, it's not easy to recite and it's not easy to make sound casual. Something that Rob Ruggiero understood on the jump is that Dear Evan Hansen is an actor's musical first and foremost. And it all starts with the title role, played by Michael Fabish. Fabish is a veteran Evan Hansen performer. He played the role in the Broadway production's second national tour, and he is very obviously superior to Ben Platt in every way. He actually looks like a teenager for one thing, but he's also so much more spontaneous, with a much more honest sense of vulnerability that allows him to connect more to the Murphys and lets us see that he wants to comfort them. You especially feel that in the song For Forever, where he fabricates the story of how he broke his arm with Connor at his side in the apple orchard. Fabish also makes Evan a fast talker, which makes the moments where he's being really awkward palatable, especially in the first half of Act 2, after the Connor project takes off and he starts alienating everyone important to him. Fabish achieves the difficult, thankless task of being a great listening actor, playing a character who is extremely self-conscious, struggling with maintaining meaningful conversations with people on even a basic level. You feel how hard it is for Evan to be around others. Fabish's performance of waving through a window was devastating in its subtlety. You're with Evan all the way through, even when things go wrong for him, including the panic attack that he experiences before You Will Be Found. And it resolves itself in an Act 1 finale where you see Evan's loneliness being healed before our eyes. When Evan actually pulls through in forming relationships, the honesty of Fabish's portrayal makes each one come across as a genuine moment. Michael Fabish took this extremely polarizing character and gave him a performance that was idiosyncratic and fully realistic, making us see his imperfections as human. Jackie Burns matches Fabish's energy as Heidi. Jackie Burns is the actor who has had the longest run as Elphaba in Wicked, and you could tell. Burns excellently portrayed the angst that Heidi feels about being a single parent and struggling to balance school, work, and raising a teenager who is already a handful. All the guilt, all the pressures, all the fears of failure are properly represented here. There are points in the show where Burns expresses Heidi's genuine shame and embarrassment for not being able to give Evan what he needs from her, leading to confrontations between the two of them that a mother and son in this situation would actually have. And it's really captivating. This is good drama. And this dynamic between Michael Fabish and Jackie Burns comes to a head in an absolute wombo combo, with Evan's song Words Fail and Heidi's song So Big and So Small. Both of these songs come during their lowest points, and the profundity of their sadness makes both of these songs taken together truly a cathartic experience. Gee, it's almost as if Benj Pasek and Justin Paul are actually really good songwriters when not involved with problematic people. Joshua Bess as Connor is a really interesting case in presenting the duality of man. At the start of the show, Bess plays the brooding bully side with an abrasiveness and sharp combative movements. But after his death, Connor appears as a vision in Evan's mind. It's here that Bess plays him as much more of a probing instigator, playing into Evan's insecurities, asking Evan important questions that challenge Evan's role in a tragedy that isn't his. Though he's not necessarily that way at the start. In Sincerely Me, he's portrayed more as comic relief, pretending to be the version of himself that Evan is presenting. But then as the show goes on, Connor realizes that he cannot pretend anymore, and neither can Evan. And by the by, Sincerely Me was a pretty great comic standout. The song is done as a trio between Connor, Evan, and also Jared, and they do this fun thing where they put on cool guy sunglasses and they start doing Fortnite dances together, like they dab, they hit the wall, and it was just funny stuff. Jared in this production is played by Brian Munar, and he is actually another criticism that I have against this show. He is the most dated character in the whole show. Stephen Levinson wrote Jared as the very caustic, perverted nerd that you're liable to see in shows like The Big Bang Theory. In almost every scene, Jared spouts very casual homophobia and sexism and just general toxicity overall. I won't lie, it got pretty cringy at times. But Munar does well in making Jared's snark feel intentional, interpreting his jerk-ass attitude as a guard or a shield to hide his anxiety underneath. Munar's strongest acting moments was when he let the mask slip, and we see the vulnerability there, particularly in Act 2 when we see Evan changing for the worse. Alana is played by Savvy Jackson, who made a spectacular Muny debut as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. Jackson has certainly carved out a niche for herself, playing really bubbly, cheerful characters. Except Jackson plays Alana very tactlessly, making the character's opportunistic, ambitious quality kinda sinister. Literally the first thing we hear in the second act is Alana addressing herself as the co-president, associate treasurer, media consultant, chief technology officer, assistant creative director, and public policy director of the Connor Project, and yes, I did have to look up a copy of the script to make that critique. The Murphys are played at the Muny as an in-depth character study of the different forms that grief takes, how their ignorance of Connor's mental illness did nothing for them but perpetuate generational trauma, which is poignantly explored in the song Requiem, as Zoe Afra Sophia Tully explores the unresolved anger of being abused by Connor and neglected by her parents, and does so in such a forceful way, almost as if she's saying she's glad her brother's dead. Zoe's progression from angsty detachment to genuine love for Evan and what he has done for them was made totally convincing by Tully. Cynthia and Larry are played by Muny and Broadway darlings, as well as real-life spouses Maggie Lakis and Ron McClure. Maggie Lakis plays Cynthia with a heartbreaking sense of guilt that she was never good enough of a mother to her family. You could tell through Lakis's outward sorrow on stage that she desperately needs to believe that what Evan and Connor had was real. Ron McClure, as Larry, does some of the best acting that I have ever seen from him live. McClure does a masterful job of making Larry's grief internalized until he can't. Like many men of his generation, Larry was raised to be a figure of resolve and strength, and McClure portrays that side as Larry taking it too far, deflecting any real emotional attachment, and it makes the moments where Larry is overcome by his repressed emotions so much more powerful. You Will Be Found has a moment of blocking where Larry actually breaks down to the floor crying, and To Break in a Glove shows Larry making the fatherly bond with Evan that he couldn't have with Connor. Rob McClure gave one of the most cathartic performances of the evening. All of the actors in the Muny's production did sound justice to the material, so much so that I almost feel like it's too intimate for the Muny. Because the main cast of Dear Evan Hansen is fairly small, with no featured ensemble roles outside of the pre-recorded ones, featured in You Will Be Found. I think if Dear Evan Hansen was performed in a smaller house or even a black box space, and the quality of the characterizations were the exact same as the Muny's, me plus that equals a blubbering mess. That really is a testament to how unbelievably well the actors work at the Muny, particularly their vocal performances, so full of emotional weight that's haunting and joyous and profound. The iconic Pasek and Paul score was conducted with a sure hand by musical director Roberto Sina, giving these classic songs a dramatic depth that in the cast recording I honestly thought was lacking. It's a quality that can't be replicated. The musical staging by Rob Ruggiero uses the Muny stage to the fullest. The turntable simulating Evan's struggle to navigate the school's halls during waving through a window, using the ensemble to symbolize the virality of Evan's speech in You Will Be Found, and having much of the action play out on the Muny's thrust, which allows the show's spectacular moments to stand out even more, and for the production designers to craft a vision that truly masters how to create intimacy on a large scale. All of the production elements work in tandem to realize Ruggiero's vision that we are seeing the show through computer screens. The scenic design by Michael Schweikart mainly consists of realistic furniture and props that are set up against overlapping screens that have projection mapping capabilities. The video design by Kevin Loney features title cards for each location, paring down the scenes with digitized backgrounds that look like pixels transforming into stock photos. You Will Be Found features stunning live video effects of social media responses to Evan's speech, close-ups of Michael Fabrish's face, even a looping animation that lasts throughout the intermission. The lighting design by Rob Denton keeps the lights focused on the single spots on stage where the scenes are playing out, keeping our eyes firmly planted on the moment, which I cannot emphasize enough how hard that is to do on a massive stage. The costumes by Joseph Schroeb are naturalistic modern clothes that fit the characters perfectly, including Evan's iconic polo shirts, and the very real cast on his arm that the backstage crew have to build on Michael Fabish's arm every night, fresh. Even the sound design stands out by John Shivers and David Patridge. They made excellent use of digital alert sounds and notification sounds, some of them even placing a dramatic button on certain scenes. It's satisfying. And something that I will never forget for the rest of my life is this show's final tableau, For Forever, the reprise that serves as the finale. The entire cast stands on a stage full of apple tree saplings courtesy of Missouri's Frizella Plant Nursery, all the while the LCD screens are projecting an open sky that is unfiltered, undigitized, and infinite. Literally, for forever. Everything about the Muny's production of Dear Evan Hansen works. Dear Evan Hansen is a deeply important musical, and it's one that has forced me personally to carry its weight of the issues that it explored. It forces people to carry that weight, especially because Stephen Levinson was really clever in not giving any of the characters easy outs. This is the kind of musical that asks more hard questions than giving really any satisfying answers. And chief among these hard questions is it better to be confronted with difficult truths than to hide behind comforting lies? Another vital thing that Dear Evan Hansen leaves with us, and it's something that's really important to me, is that genuinely connecting with people, whether it's finding a family, making friends, or just in general learning how to not be a lonely person, is actually really hard. This year, the World Health Organization listed loneliness as a threat to public health. And with the amount of homicides, suicides, and violent crimes happening in the world that are attributed to loneliness, I think having access to art that acknowledges how exhausting it is and how scary it is to not know how to connect with other people is legitimately an emergency. I was a gay man who was in the closet for way too long, and I am also an autistic man who spent my early years as a heavily sheltered introvert. So because of that, watching the Muny's Dear Evan Hansen has been a very validating experience for me. This is one of the most brilliant examples that I have seen of a theater company taking a musical that I originally did not think highly of and presenting it with such honesty, such integrity, such respect that it completely changed my opinion of it for the better. Profoundly, significantly better. That is rare. And the fact that the Muny achieved that with Dear Evan Hansen, one of the most polarizing musicals that I have ever encountered, this is a paradigm shift. This is one of the most outstanding musicals that I have ever had to review in the 4 years that I've been doing Jack Reviews musicals. And probably one of the very best that I will have ever seen in my lifetime. But hey, what do I know? Did you see the Muny's production of Dear Evan Hansen? If so, what did you think about it? Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more St. Louis musical theater reviews coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, long live the musical, and thank you. Thank you for being here.